And I will turn it over to the two of you.
Great. I think I'll probably do most of the talking, but Ben, feel free to chime in. I also wanted to say up front that I do need to leave by like 9:50ish. I have a meeting at town hall, at 10, so just a heads up if I have to exit then. But, I'm here today to talk about the specialized energy code, which is a warrant article, Article 18, on town meeting, and I know a lot of you guys are town meeting members. So I appreciate you taking the time for this little preview. We're also going to be having a public forum about this in a couple of weeks, so there'll be more opportunities to invite others into the room. I'm going to share with you a slide deck that we used for the finance committee. It's the same deck essentially that we've used for the select board, the school committee, a slightly different version than what we use for our builders forum, the planning board, and all of the boards that we have spoken to so far have voted to support our article either unanimously or through a large majority. So let me share my screen.
Could you just say what the builders forum is?
The builders forum was a meeting that we had specifically for builders, so local builders. So this code, it pertains to new construction in Natick. So we wanted to reach out to builders to make sure they understood what it was and how it might impact future projects that they have. So we reached out to 40 builders, like the most frequent builders in Natick. They tend to be the same people year to year, and we invited them to a special forum that we had kind of more detail that was more like builder level kind of information versus I think what the regular person needs for understanding it.
It's just like the stretch code or beyond the stretch code.
I'm gonna get to it. So maybe I'll go through my slides first. I don't have a lot, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. But they kind of build on each other.
Ridley's just pointing out in the chat, if you can send me information about the public forum to me, then I'll put that in a
Yes.
follow-up too.
Great, I will. Okay, so I'm just gonna move this Zoom bar on my screen so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so there's 3 levels of energy codes in Massachusetts, and it really starts with so in Massachusetts, communities don't have the option of picking like making changes to the code themselves. Like every community has 3 choices available to them. You can't have one municipality have something that's totally different than any other community in the state. The state decides what codes you can follow. So there's 3 choices in Massachusetts: the base code, which is essentially the default if your community doesn't take any additional action. And that follows the International Energy Conservation Code, which is called the IECC, and it's updated on a regular basis. So the most recent edition is from 2021. And then there's some amendments that our state makes overall to that code. And so that's the base code. So every community has at least the base code in Massachusetts, and that includes cities and towns. The stretch code is a code that layers on top of that, of the base code. And Natick has that in effect. We've had that in effect since about 2010. It required a vote of town meeting in Natick to adopt that. And in other in cities, it requires a vote of the city council. And there's over 300 communities in Massachusetts that are following the stretch code. And one of the reasons to follow the stretch code was that in order to be eligible for the Green Communities Program, which is a state program where we get funding to support energy efficiency projects, you had to do that as one of 5 criteria. And now this became available last year. So it became available in January of 2023, and Natick is not the first community to adopt it, but we're in the process of adopting the specialized code. And the specialized code applies to new construction only. It layers on top of the base code and the stretch code. It has these additional appendices, and 33 communities have already opted into it. And there's 13 additional communities expected in our region alone, which is the Northeast region of the state, with other communities across the state also exploring it.
What's the closest one to us that's also already adopted?
I have a map that shows it in a few minutes, but Weston Sherborne and Wellesley were in the first round of communities. Wayland is in the process of adopting it this Springtown meeting. And Ashland is also looking to adopt it this spring. So there's three kind of basic things to know about the specialized code. The first is that it applies to new construction only. So if you're renovating your home, if you're doing an addition to your home, altering your home, this code does not apply to it. The stretch code does apply to that, and there's been changes to the stretch code recently that makes when you do a renovation to your home, you have to also update, depending on the size of it, you may also need to upgrade the insulation of other parts of your home. But this code is only new construction. And for context in Natick, that's about between 20 and 40 new single family homes every year that are new construction. So it's a really small amount of the building that's happening in Natick.
Does it affect commercial building as well?
It does cover commercial buildings as well, and we don't see as much new commercial buildings in Natick. We do see a lot of renovations of commercial buildings. So like at the mall, for example, nothing that happens at the mall in recent years would be impacted by this because that's all renovation. The specialized code facilitates, but does not require the electrification of new buildings. So it encourages builders to go all electric with the new buildings, but it doesn't require it. There's different pathways for achieving it. So you can still use fossil fuels to build new buildings in Natick if we adopt the specialized code. And the last thing is when it goes into effect, if we're successful at town meeting, we're proposing an effective date of July 1st, 2025. So that's over a year after the town meeting vote. And we thought that was important because, you know, people might have projects in process and wanting to make sure that they aren't impacted in a way that compromises their projects. So some key features of it is that one, for large homes that are greater than new homes that are greater than 4,000 square feet that use fossil fuels, they must be all electric or net zero energy, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. If you are going to build a new building with using fossil fuels, then you need to pre-wire it to be electrified in the future. So that way it's easier and costs less for a future homeowner to stop using fossil fuels. And if you are going to use fossil fuels, then you also need to add solar arrays to your roof, to the roof. There are exemptions for places that are really shaded. The goal is not to cut down lots of trees to add solar. And then also if you achieve zero energy, which I'll explain a little bit more in a second. And the size of the solar arrays are small. So it's a 4 kilowatt solar array, which is actually less than half of the average size of new solar projects done in Natick. So the average new home or new solar project in Natick, like on a single family home, is 10 kilowatts. So 4 kilowatts, just for context, is about 10 panels. And then it also requires really strong energy efficiency performance for large multifamily. So multifamily buildings over 12,000 square feet, they need to use a pathway called Passive House that really focuses on deep energy efficiency. So as an example, if you're building a new construction single family home in Natick, which in Natick right now in the past 3 years, the median size of a single family home is just about 4,000 square feet. Yeah. Yeah, this is surprising to me too, when Ben helped look up the data. So we use MLS data to get this. And it's not, you know, it's not all like Windy Low or Greystone. This is a lot of tear downs in Natick end up becoming very large buildings. And so the median price is $1.6 million.
Yeah, it was actually the square footage too that made me exclaim.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. There was one that was almost 10,000 square feet that was built last year. Anyway, sorry. So there's 3 pathways for building. So if it's less than 4,000 square feet, then all 3 pathways are available. All electric, which means that you don't use fossil fuels to heat or cool your home or for cooking. Mixed fuel on the right, which is where you do use fossil fuels, but then you pre-wire your home and you add solar. And then zero energy is when you typically are adding solar And the amount of energy that you produce from the solar panels essentially covers the energy they use from the fossil fuels, such that you have a zero energy usage over the course of the year. And these are the three pathways that are available to homes that are under 4,000. If you're over 4,000, it's the zero energy plus or the all electric. Those are the two options. So we see there as being a lot of benefits of the specialized code, and I'll go into each of these. The first is that it's really essential to our net zero goals. So 65% of our emissions come from buildings, about split between commercial and residential. And having this code really helps us make sure that new buildings are built to meet our goals. And also that, you know, in this tear down environment that we're seeing, that homes that are currently using fossil fuels are switched, or it's supported to have a future switch of those, making it easy for the homeowners of the new buildings. And another reason is that we believe that it results in better homes and buildings. We're seeing electrification increasingly being part of custom built projects. So where a homeowner is actually really involved in the building of their home versus, you know, buying something that a builder has built on their own. And it does result in cleaner indoor air, gas stoves, and having combustion of fossil fuels in your homes. It is tied to indoor air pollution. And it also lowers the total cost. So there are similar upfront costs after incentives, but by fully electrifying a home and making it as energy efficient as possible, it results in lower long-term costs for the homeowner. The person who's living in the home is prioritized versus the upfront cost of construction. We also think it's great because it preserves choice and protects the consumer. Ultimately, the builder gets to decide which pathway they want to follow, and they can decide that based on what they see is supported by the market. They can do all electric, but they could also still choose to do fossil fuels. And it provides that protection for the consumer by making pre-wiring, by providing pre-wiring, which makes it cheaper and easier to switch fuels in the future. The other thing is there's really tons of incentives for this kind of work in Massachusetts, and it's complemented by federal tax credits, including the Inflation Reduction Act. But the Mass Save program, this is one thing that's important to know, is that after the end of this year, the Mass Save program by state law will no longer be able to provide incentives for anything related to fossil fuels. Even if you're installing a really high efficiency gas furnace, you will not be able to receive incentives for that. So all of the Mass Save incentives are really going to be focused on electrification. And another thing that we're planning on doing in Natick is providing an additional incentive for builders, which is related to training. So all of the codes there's free training available to builders through the Mass Save program. And Mass Save pays for 50% of Passive House Builder certification, which is a training for builders on how to build homes that are high efficient. It's not something that you need to get to have your home approved. Like, you don't have to be a certified Passive House builder in Natick, but it's a way for you to learn how to be a better builder in the context of this code. And we have a small amount of funds that can help us pay for up to 10 builders in Natick to fully cover that cost of the certification program. It also increases Natick's grant eligibility. So as I mentioned early on, the stretch code was a prerequisite to the Green Communities program, which is managed by the Department of Energy Resources. And Climate Leaders is essentially Green Communities 2.0. And this is a prerequisite to that program. And we expect that program to provide funding, which is really important to us for meeting our capital needs. And then we also have a sense that based on the way other state programs have gone, is that by becoming a climate leader, you may also be eligible for other grant programs, like where they say, oh, you know, it says community climate leader, check, that gives you points that help you apply for other funding opportunities. And then this is the consistency with neighboring towns slide that I mentioned with the map, which shows communities in our area. There's communities outside of this portion of Massachusetts that have also adopted the specialized code. But here you can see the ones that are in our region, and the ones that have this coming up on the spring town meeting warrant, and then also who are considering it for their fall town meeting or possibly in a future city council meeting, including Framingham.
So the blue is already done.
Yes, the blue is already, the darker blue is already adopted. The lighter blue is the stretch code, and then the white-ish color is base code.
What about the color of the stars?
The green stars are the ones, are communities that will be voting on this spring, which includes Natick, Wayland and Ashland, right, around us, and Dedham and Milton. And then in the fall is the orange star, 3 stars, which show communities there. And then the next slide, which is on my computer, but not showing up on your computer. It's weird.
Oh, that's weird.
Hold on. Try it again.
Back out and
That's
come back in.
Yeah, well,
That's really weird.
it'll maybe come, but, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
So this is just speaking to some of the meetings that we had earlier and are coming up. And I even listed Coffee with a Purpose on there. So you guys are famous with all the presentations that I've been giving. But yeah, we
People will
spoke.
think that one's a joke though, because it's April Fools, right?
Yeah,
Gotta
no one
be.
mentioned that. And actually, the public forum has changed the date. It's now on April 18th. This is a doc from the finance committee. We've updated it since then. But yeah, we've talked to builders. We spoke with the economic development committee, school committee. The school committee voted unanimously to support it as it relates to school buildings. So in Natick Memorial Elementary is the next school that's likely to be either majorly renovated or rebuilt, and they want to build it to meet the specialized code. And then the select board voted unanimously to support it. They're actually a co-sponsor with the Net Zero Committee for this. And then the finance committee voted to recommend favorable action with a vote of 11-4. And the planning board last week voted to support this as well with a vote of 3-1 abstaining and then 1 member not being there. So that's our track record so far.
Terrific. On the finance vote, the 4 against,
Mhm.
was there any theme to kind of the concerns they raised or?
Yeah, their concerns were, I think, they weren't fans of electrification. And another question that's come up a lot is, will this be more expensive, knowing that we want to make housing more affordable in Natick? And in the context of new construction, where homes are selling at $1.6 million, I have personally struggled to find how this would really change affordability of homes in Natick. But regardless of that, the cost of building a new electric home would be the same with the specialized code as it is right now. In the sense that the specialized code, if you're building an all electric home, you don't have to do anything different. You can build an all electric home right now in Natick and it would cost the same as it would if we adopt the specialized code. And you get a ton of incentives to help support that. And you end up with a home that costs more to operate over its useful life. If you are going to build a home with fossil fuels, yes, it would cost more, but it's pretty minimal. It's pre-wiring, which in talking to a very large local electrician that most people know in Natick, that would be pretty minimal when you're at a new construction, when you're wiring a home. And then adding a really small solar array. 4 kilowatts. So that is pretty small. And for context, if you're looking at just dollars for solar, that size solar array would cost $15,000. But then you also have, excuse me, that doesn't include any of the incentives. So there's a 30% federal tax credit and a state tax credit that you get from installing solar. So it's even less than that.
You could probably stop your share unless
Yes.
there are other things you want to show us.
Jillian, how about the construction that's in progress now, the multi-unit? How does the code apply to them, the electrification? I mean, I'm thinking of Stonegate, they have 2 projects going up and the Missing Tooth and the one on Washington Street. So we have a lot of multi-unit construction, more than I've seen in years going on right now. So how does the code apply?
So this code wouldn't apply, if it was voted at town meeting, it wouldn't apply to any project. Until, it wouldn't apply to any current project that's in progress. It would only apply to projects that have their building permit pulled after July 1st of 2025. So you could have your building permit pulled on June 30th of 2025, and the code would not apply to you. So in some ways, you know, if you really don't want to apply, like comply with this code, which really is not that challenging, I believe. All you need to have your ducks lined up to, you know, have your permit like filed before July 1st of 2025. So
Now,
it gives, so there's 2 construction seasons, really.
Yeah. What was the reaction at the builders themselves? How did they react?
They didn't have really many questions. I was kind of bracing myself to see what builders would say, because I can understand why you wouldn't want someone giving you more rules to follow, right? No matter what your feelings are about something, even if it's something you're already doing. We had a really great builder who does this work already a lot from a company called Thought Forms, and he just has made a career of building high efficiency, like net zero homes, and he shared like his strategies for doing that. And I think that was really well received. And speaking with the building commissioner, who I talked to a lot in this process, he shared that this isn't a really complicated thing for builders to add on to their projects. It's pretty straightforward, pre-wiring and solar for, you know, the single family homes. The stretch code, he said, is actually much more difficult for builders. So this is really pretty straightforward. And he also said, yeah, if you want to reach your net zero goals, this is how you have to start building.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Okay,
if we're serious about it, that's
cool.
what we need to do.
I see both Brian and Brinley have their hands up. Brian, do you? But you gotta come off mute, Brian.
One thing I haven't heard once is you mentioning trees or landscaping. I think those are very important parts of the whole picture if you're looking at sustainability that are really impactful, especially trees and especially landscaping because of the fertilizers and the waste that comes from this real green lawn that's been the tradition forever, kind of, and now the sustainable natural landscape effort. And my neighborhood in particular has lost a lot of trees in the last few years. And as you drive through it, it's impacted the feel of the neighborhood. It's an old neighborhood, but it looks like it's new because most of the trees have been lopped off. And there seems to be just, there's no holdbacks or no preventing anybody that wants to cut down a tree to go ahead and cut it. And that affects the whole neighborhood. I think it's really lessened our value and cachet of this neighborhood. With a lot of them are newcomers that come in and get a house and say, "Oh, these trees are work," and they take them down. And so that whole part of the picture needs to be addressed seriously by the town, and an effort to offer trees for people that are hesitant to put something in because of the cost or just the lack of consciousness about the importance of the trees. So there's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks. Just 2 comments on that. So, this is only an energy code, and so it doesn't specifically address trees except for not cutting them down for solar. So that's taken care of in this. I will say that article, I think it's 26. I don't remember the exact number for sure, but there is an article for town meeting that would require within wetlands, if a tree is cut down, that it be replaced. And Claire Rondelli, the conservation agent, has been working on that. And so that will be on the warrant as well. And she did receive favorable action at the finance committee the same night that I was there. And I know that the Conservation Commission is working on a tree protection bylaw. It's not for this town meeting. I'm not sure it'll be ready for fall town meeting, but that's something that they're working to advance too. And I agree with you about the sustainable landscaping. I'm not sure what the town's appetite would be for mandating what is planted on people's lawns, but that's something that, you know, the town, I think, could look into further. And then on the tree planting program, we do actually have two programs right now that residents can participate in to get access to free trees. So we have a street tree planting program that our tree warden manages. And in that program, the town will purchase a tree, plant it on within the right of way, which I think usually extends about 20 feet into people's properties or something like that. There's more details on the website, but they'll plant it and they'll take care of it for you for 3 years. And then Ben and I are actually working on a program. This is our second year. We received a grant to provide 50 people, 50 properties with free trees that are, I think they start at like 6 feet high. And we're really focusing those resources on neighborhoods where there's heat islands, which Sarah helped us map over the summer. So right now we're really doing a push in Natick Center near the Navy Yard area, near the train station. That has been proven to be an extremely hot part of town. And so that is where we're focusing those resources. And we hope that we can do that again next year. So we'll have had 3 years of doing that and through a grant, and considering asking the town to provide funding to do that annually moving forward.
Wow, excellent.
Thank you.
Brindley, wanna chime in?
Good morning, Jillian. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so my first question, I have two, and I'll just give you both at the same time. My first question was very similar to what Ricky was asking, but coming at it from a different point. Are we, since so many of the projects in town are at a stage where they probably haven't pulled all of their permits for everything, including electrification, are we able to have conversations with them? For instance, for where the block is, as you can see, nothing's been done in terms of outside of the foundation. So changing what they're doing is very possible. So I'm wondering if there is communication and outreach to see if Stonegate and the block and the current projects are interested in trying to participate a little bit in this. And the second has to do with education and supply and demand. I'm curious about the conversations around the suppliers to work with HVAC and everything that's happening, because I do believe as Massachusetts moves towards more electrification, the supply of electricians is going to need to increase. I know that already people have trouble finding enough electricians, and I'm wondering where this is on the grand scale. My nephew is an electrician apprentice through his high school and is working now in the field. And I know that they are starting to talk about it some. And so I'm wondering if there's been outreach to Keefe Tech or other ways that involve education around increasing supply.
Yeah,
Excellent.
so thanks, Brinley. Nice to hear from you. So on your first question, we have a staff team that we call the development review team that meets with developers about upcoming projects and gives them our advice and suggestions on those efforts, like usually like the large ones that require review by the planning board. So I've spoken to the block developer and the Stonegate developer and provided them with information about electrification. I don't think they were super interested. That's just the way it is. So I don't see them changing their minds, but always happy to talk to them. And on the other question about electricians, yes, we have reached out to Keefe Tech. So Keefe Tech, we're trying, I think, in Natick as a town, build a bit of a stronger relationship with Keefe Tech anyway. Our equipment maintenance division of the DPW, they are now using co-ops, I think is what they call them, from Keefe Tech to help with meeting some of our vehicle maintenance needs, which has been a hard place for us with staffing. And then with this grant that we got to do a partial electrification of Benham Elementary School with a federal grant, Keefe Tech is actually a partner in that. So we're going to be working with, they have HVAC-R, so HVAC and then R is refrigeration program, and we're going to be using the Benham project as a project learning opportunity for them. So they won't really be like doing any of the work, but they'll be seeing the change over time. And we actually recently looked into a grant around EV charging and are trying to work out the details of that right now, and are interested in including Keep Tech staff in that, and also in a car share program, so a EV car share program, so they could help maintain those vehicles.
Was that great, making more
That's-
charge?
Yes, yes, as part of it, it's complicated how charging stations are paid for, but yeah, likely.
That's really cool. Can I have two follow-ups? The first one is, would public input towards Stonegate and the block, do you think that would make any difference? For instance, if we were to write letters to say, hey, this is coming down the block, we'd like to see you participate. Do you think that would make any difference? In that, and secondly, have we reached out to the high school to let the environmental clubs and all of them understand or in the middle schools to understand the opportunities that are in this with the education? Because I think that's great with all of the Keith Tech stuff. It's wonderful to hear.
I don't think on the Stonegate thing that it would really be worth it personally, just because they're so far along in that project. So they do have permits pulled to do their work. So I feel like that project is kind of past, and I am not really sure what's happening with the block right now. My understanding is they might need to go to the planning board again for like another adjustment, but I could be wrong about that. So my experience with even like our Kennedy Middle School project is that when you're not starting with this and like as a goal in the beginning, that it's very hard to readjust. So in that project, I felt like we ended up with a great building in many ways, but all the sustainability aspects of it were like, oh, if we have enough money, we can do this additional thing. And so that meant things like even where we were gonna put, equipment on the roof, it wasn't optimized for solar. We had a solar ready roof, but it wasn't a solar maximum roof, if that makes sense. And then as it relates to educating students in Natick public schools, we are working with the Earth Club. We have a member, so we have a new net zero committee, which I'd love for you guys to meet at some point. And that committee is like essentially the replacement of the sustainability committee, and their focus is really solely on the net zero action plan. And they have actually been the ones presenting the slide deck to all the boards and committees. I've been kind of just there to help answer questions, which has been great. And the reason I brought them up is because we have a youth representative on that committee, and she's a member of the Earth Club at Natick High School. And the state is also in the process of revising their curriculum for climate change. And I think that it will be touching more grades in a more meaningful way. Right now, it's really only taught at the 8th grade level. So the opportunities to really like talk to students about it are limited.
Thanks for all that. So excuse me, but I just want to get to some of the other folks here. We've got Pat and Bill, and then I know Cindy also has a question. Pat, can we go to you? But you've got to come off mute, Matt. Pat.
Good morning. Thank you, Jillian, for the explanation of the new codes and stuff. I have kind of a side question like Brian's. At least here in my neighborhood, and I think a lot of areas in Natick, there are professional landscapers, and they really do use very powerful, polluting machines to do their jobs. And I know that the town doesn't necessarily measure that kind of greenhouse gas emission, but I was wondering if there's anything going on. I know not in this article, but is there anything going on to, they have these groups in other towns called quiet communities, organizations and so forth. And I was wondering if there's anything perking or about that type of thing.
I haven't seen or heard from anyone who's like really championing that in Natick. I think that kind of effort probably really needs a champion that's outside of the like out of town staff, you know what I mean? But I think it would be nice to have that change happen.
Yeah. Yeah, oh well, there's almost always more we can do.
Right.
Bill, do you wanna go?
Hi, Jillian. Thanks for coming. I have two questions. And I know you covered this first one, but I just want you to just slow down just a bit and help me with it. You said the average new home was 4,000 something square feet,
That's,
and the code kicks in at 4,000 square feet. And I'm wondering if builders have an incentive, or if you could explain the difference between a 3,900 square foot house and a 4,100 square foot house. I know you went over it quickly, but if you could just help with that. So would the builders have an incentive to go just under 4,000 square feet? The other thing you said, question number two, you mentioned the 4 kilowatt requirements, and that would equate to about 10 panels. That is significantly more efficient than the ones I have from 10 years ago. Could you talk a little bit about solar panel efficiency? Thanks.
Sure. So I am just going to try sharing my screen again really quick so I can talk to you about that same slide. Because the code it actually affects all new construction. It doesn't matter which size building. There's a difference when you build something I'm just going to try sharing my screen again really quick so I can talk to you about that same slide. Because the code it actually affects all new construction. It doesn't matter which size building. There's a difference when you build something that's over 4,000 square feet. So this shows the 3 pathways. So the pathways, if you are building a home that's over 4,000 square feet, then if you're building a home that's over 4,000 square feet, only all electric and zero energy are pathways available to you. You have 2 pathways available. In zero energy, it does allow you to use a mixed fuel, like fossil fuels, but that would require a lot more solar for that home that's over 4,000 square feet. So that way it can achieve that zero energy over the course of a year requirement. If you're building a home that's less than 4,000 square feet, then all 3 pathways are available, and the mixed fuel requirement would be less expensive than zero energy if you're just thinking about like the cost of adding solar, the one-time upfront cost, because you could still do a small array. You wouldn't have to do a large array that really takes into account how much energy the home is using. So does that answer your first question? Doug, do you wanna?
Well, I wanna jump in
Yes,
just
thanks.
a little bit with, that 4,000 square foot cutoff.
Mhm.
Is that unique to Natick's implementation, or is that,
That's just
the choice available?
yeah.
Would you foresee in the future maybe that the standard might start getting back down to smaller size homes? Not that anybody seems to build them, but
Yeah, it's possible. That's the one important thing that you pointed out, which is that we can't customize the code to Natick at all. So we just have to take it how it is.
Yeah.
And so the 4,000 square foot is the same in every community that adopts a specialized code. Maybe it will result in like slightly smaller homes. A 3,900 square foot home wouldn't have to meet the 4,000 square foot home requirement. And if that's like an out for our builder, then you can't really do much about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then Bill had this question about solar panel
Yes.
efficiency.
So I have in here at the end in my appendix a slide about solar in Natick that I wanted to show you. One second, here we go. So solar has become a lot more efficient in Natick, and it's not because people are installing a lot more solar in terms of the size of their system than they used to, because each panel is producing more energy than it used to. So and as part of that, the average cost of solar has also gone down in Natick by about 25% since 2012. Which, what else can you think of that has actually gone down in price since 2012 at this point? But yeah, over time, the panels have become better at making electricity, and people can install the same amount of panels and get more power than they used to.
Terrific.
The other thing about solar that this slide mentions is there's different ways of financing it also, so it doesn't say in the code that you have to be the one who owns the solar panels. And about a little less than 25% of Natick homes that have solar have solar that's third party owned. So they lease their panels from someone else, and they save money by paying a lower rate than they would for the electricity that they get from the grid from those panels. And that's how the town actually has done its solar installations. Our panels at the high school and other places are all owned by a third party. And we have a agreement where we pay them a discounted rate.
I'm surprised the percent's that low, only in the sense that I know. When the people knock on your door or call you,
Mhm.
it's always those power plan options that
Yeah,
they're offering you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
apparently the majority of people that put in solar, put in their own, do it themselves, so.
I think it's because a lot of people in Natick are fortunate to be able to afford to pay for the panel installation, and when you own it, it does create more value for you.
Mhm.
So if you're able to take a loan and finance it yourself, which a lot of people do take loans to pay for their solar panels.
Mhm.
And it used to maybe be a little easier because of interest rates, but it is typically a better for you if you own them.
Okay,
Yeah.
good to know, or one of our kids is considering it and framing it right now. Cindy, I know you had a question.
Multifamily homes, I saw one slide that had something, but, how does it, how does that fit in?
So multifamily homes, if it's over 12,000 square feet, the
Let's
entire,
just say
Yeah.
one, two, like, so my landlord,
Mhm.
owns my house, it's 3 apartments.
Mhm.
And eventually he plans to like tear it down and put in 3, like 1 building with 3 units. And he's done a couple of houses where it's 2 units next to each other, and there's a lot of those in Natick. So I'm just curious how that.
Right, so each unit, the way that the code works is each unit receives its own energy efficiency rating
Mhm.
and would need to meet the code on its own, so.
Okay.
If the units combined would be more than 12,000 square feet, then it is required to pursue passive house certification, which is, there's different ways of showing that you're meeting the code. There's PERS ratings, which is the energy efficiency rating, a passive house rating. There's TEDI, which is something more for commercial offices, ASHRAE, different like ways of showing that you're meeting the code. And for really large multifamily, passive house is required.
Okay.
Cool.
And
I know-
then
oh, go
just,
ahead. No, go
go ahead, sorry, the building where next to Moore's Tavern, that's another new construction, so that would be in the same category, and I'm assuming the block is up here.
Mhm.
And Stonegate is where St. Patrick's was?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay, and then, okay. And
but none
then-
of those would have
none
a
of those,
special,
right,
right,
got it. Okay, just so happens that they're like all happening at the same time.
right, yeah.
And then, I think I read this recently, and I don't know if you know about it, but Morse Institute has an induction stove unit that people can borrow.
Yes,
And I'm assuming that when somebody goes all electric, then they can't have a gas stove.
right.
So if people are interested in trying that, so wait, you can borrow this thing for a couple of weeks and try it at home.
Yeah,
And did you also, my other question is, did you say that it's more expensive to operate an all electric home than it is to operate with fossil fuels?
and it depends which fossil fuels you're using. And the real thing that's great about the new code is that you're having to build homes that are really tight and are really well insulated.
Uh-huh.
And that means that you're, the guy from the state, he says we're like crushing heating load to oblivion is how he says it.
Okay.
And I like the idea of crushing something to oblivion,
Yeah.
but basically you're building a home so tight that like you're not having to spend a lot of energy on heating
Okay,
at all. And so by doing that, you are really reducing your costs in a significant way. And you're also making your homes more resilient. Because if you have an all electric home or if you have a natural gas home, when you don't have electricity to run your furnace, you don't have heat at either of those places, right? Whether it's if it's heat pumps or if it's natural gas or oil burner. But it's over the lifetime of the home, all electric homes are expected to be less to operate, is what the state studies say. when built to meet these energy efficiency performance standards.
And so is, air conditioning something that you pretty much will need to have if you have such a tight home, or like?
Well, often the way you would achieve an all-electric home is with a heat pump, which provides heating and cooling.
Okay.
And I think most new construction is typically adding air conditioning as something that, the builders feel is necessary to the market.
Let's see, Ricky, you have your hand up, but I also want to be mindful of
Yes,
the
I do have
time.
to, because I have to meet my boss at times.
Yeah.
so.
Ben, are you also leaving?
I can
with-
stay if you want to cover him.
I would love to hear more about kind of how you're coming into this field and
He's
everything.
only been here a month, so.
Yeah.
maybe on him.
And we're friendly. Yeah. Ricky, did you have something real
Yeah,
quick?
I just wanted to know the project in South Natick on Elliott, the Elliott School. Will that be eligible for the all electrifications code? Or will that be? Yes,
Any building can be all electric right now. So there's a home on Indian Ridge, which is near my, house, and it is being built to have geothermal, to be, I think essentially zero energy. The roof is completely covered with solar panels. It's a beautiful new home. It's very large. But it will meet the specialized code, and we don't have the specialized code. So everything in the specialized code, people can do right now. The Elliott School, I do not know if they are building to meet all electric or not. I'm a little doubtful that they are, because I think I would have heard of it, but for a building that is planning on meeting the code ahead of time is MathWorks is expanding their campus. I don't know if you guys knew that. They're building another building, and that building will be all electric, and they're doing some really cool stuff to make it happen. Like, they're exploring how they can capture heat from their data centers, where they have like really like their server rooms that are so hot. How can they use that heat to support the building? And yeah, they're really, and that's, there
now
are.
where is this? This is the school that's being built on Union Street?
No,
No.
the school on Union Street, I don't know if it will be all electric or not, but MathWorks on Route 9 and Speed
Oh.
Street, they are building a new building at their Lakeside campus, and that building will be all electric.
Great.
Well, Jillian,
One other question. I guess not recently, but I'm aware that methane is more damaging to the environment than carbon emissions. And we have a dump that emits methane. And I'm wondering what is being done, if anything, to capture that methane and possibly reroute it as an energy source.
Yeah, so I'm not as up to speed on that, but I do know that we looked into it at one point. And when I say we, I mean the town. I wasn't super involved in that, but they looked into methane capture, and it didn't seem like it was really a viable project, because it actually doesn't emit that much methane. So I would have to dig deeper to answer that question more fully, but I know people are interested in it, and they've looked into it and kind of come back disappointed.
Well, I guess back in the day when the dump was capped, it may not have been the technology or the interest, but nowadays when you're looking at it through a different lens, I thought it might be worth considering again and seeing what's available to capture it and to use it. That's it.
yeah,
Thanks.
thanks, Ricky, and thank you, Jillian, so
Yeah.
much for coming.
Yeah, I'd love to see you guys again soon. There's a lot of other great projects going on.
See Rotary in a few
Thanks
weeks.
so much,
Jillian.
Jillian.
We'll